Sure. Yeah. Just my crew is just my family, my wife Katie, and my 5 kids. My oldest is, geez, 18. He turns 19. Um, and my youngest is Truman. He's 6. And yeah, our oldest is our most avid sailor, and he's probably the most competent. I grew up in Amarillo, Texas, and learned to sail at Boy Scout camp. And and so our family has been sailing small catamarans for a long time. So we own a beach catamaran as well. And so all my teenage kids know how to sail, and have spent quite a bit of time sailing on small bodies of water. And so we just bought Tusitala in January. And yeah, so as far as jobs go, owning a boat is 90% like cleaning the boat and like fixing it, and a little bit of sailing. And so, they're always helpful. So our boat right now is moored in San Diego, and we live in Utah. And we're preparing over the next couple of years to take some time off and go cruising. And we don't have a whole lot of experience, and so we're sort of building our resume up. I've done a little bit of offshore sailing, and we've, over the past year, we've taken a handful of trips off the coast of California up to Catalina and the Channel Islands. So
Great, great. And so what is your, like when you're on the blue water, what is the experience been? I noticed on your blog, you talked about the desert of the ocean.
Oh yeah.
Kind of
Yeah,
want
that's
to read a little
interesting.
bit about that.
Well, in most of our trips right now, because I'm still working, we're out there trying to just get experience. It's interesting to notice. So we're always looking for wildlife right now. That's one of the things that we do the most. We do some fishing and looking for wildlife. And at a certain point, when you get out there, you see like once you get off the continental shelf, and you're not near sort of banks and areas where there's a lot of fish. There's just nothing, and I think it's beautiful and it's fantastic, but um, it's quite a beautiful, sort of peaceful, lonely experience a little bit. You're just there with you and your family, and that's kind of one of the things that I like about it is taking it some time to get the kids away from all of their electronics and their distractions that they have, and to teach the family to sort of rely on each other and build some skills of self-reliance. And I think sailing on the ocean is a really good way to do that.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Can you tell us a little bit about the name Tusitala? It's so
Sure.
unusual. Did you get it inherited from the family?
No, the boat was originally named Living Free.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and Tusitala is sort of well, from what I understand, it's the nickname given to Robert Louis Stevenson, the author. And so, anyways, and it means teller of tales. And so I think that's for us, it's just like a platform for us to begin to craft our own sort of story.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, what's the best thing about her?
Well, when we were looking for a boat, we were trying to find a boat that was big enough, because we have a family of 7, and so there aren't a lot of boats that really give everybody enough space to sort of have their own space. In fact, when we began to look at sailboats, we were looking at monohulls.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we started to look at Beneteaus, and but the real problem was.
I think I read that you sailed a Jeanneau as well. So
yeah, Jeanneau and a Veneto, those are some of the things that we took test sails out on. And even though you could kind of squeeze in 7 people, 7 people couldn't find sort of their own space, right? And even Tusitala is a little smaller than I'd like to be, but it's as big as I can actually afford, to be honest.
Right.
So the primary thing that we like is that is the space and the size of a catamaran. It sleeps, geez, I guess technically it sleeps like 10, and if you were to count the the settee, you could sleep maybe 12, but we don't really count those. And so sleeping quarters are really important for us. And we also like that it's a catamaran. After my wife and I took out a couple of, I think the Argento was a 42 foot and the Beneteau was 45 foot. And we're quite used to sailing catamarans. Heeling was not something we were really accustomed to, heeling over, especially when we took out a couple of small boats before that as well. I can't remember exactly what they were. They were sub 30 feet. And yeah, I mean, we're used to flying hulls on beach cats, but that's a different animal from just sort of heeling and getting rolled around constantly. So I love catamarans because they just are, to me, they feel more comfortable. I've heard people say like they don't feel natural when you're sailing like a monohull, but I've only really sailed catamarans, so they feel perfectly natural to me. And I prefer the way they feel, and that and I think they're also comfortable because they don't heel. So yeah, that's another thing we like.
That's awesome. And what about the heads? Are there enough for your family?
So there's actually more than we need. I mean, our house has 2 bathrooms and our catamaran has 4 heads. So we don't have a huge house either. Our kids are accustomed to living in tight quarters, sharing bedrooms and sharing bathrooms. There's more than I would like. I would actually like, and I know that you mentioned you might ask me this question, but I would like to take out at least one of the heads and just convert it to a pantry area. And that's what our plan is for when we go cruising. We're going to convert one area to just a complete sort of like utility closet / pantry area where we'll put an additional freezer, a bunch of shelving for, just a bunch more, utilitarian storage space.
Yeah, no, what else would you change, if anything, besides that? Is there anything
Yeah,
board?
yeah, I mean, a couple of things. The previous owner, she was owned by a couple who didn't have any kids, but they had set it up for cruising pretty decently. They've installed a Watermaker, some solar panels. They installed a washer dryer combo area in a really convenient spot, and the guy was like a master woodworker, so it looks very good the way he did everything. But what I would change, obviously, I think that everybody says this, is we're just going to need a whole lot more electricity. So I plan to put on another probably 1,000 watts of solar, and we're going to be upgrading batteries. Right now, she's got 600 amp hours of AGMs, and I plan to put on about 900 amp hours of lithiums. So batteries and solar will be one of the big upgrades that we do. And then the dinghy right now, it is because again, family of 7, the dinghy is a little small and very underpowered. So in fact, we're in the process of buying a 13-foot dinghy with a larger motor that can push us all around. So those are some of the upgrades we have.
I enjoyed reading your adventure going out to Santa Cruz Island during the Channel Islands in your dinghy, and you had that sort of swamping event with the kids.
Yeah. That was super, super funny. Yeah, we all got on this tiny dinghy, and it was probably a 4-man dinghy. Like, it was really small. And it was a beautiful day off of the coast of, I think, Santa Cruz. And we thought, well, we'll just row in, like, no sweat. And even though you can see the surf, like, you can't see, it's hard to see how big the surf is, and it really wasn't that big, to be honest. But the dinghy was not going to make it through the surf with 7 people on it. And yeah, we all flipped over, and it was quite the adventure getting in and getting out of that surf, because then the surf went up but we made it, and it was fun.
Yeah, it's a good adventure, and it's a safe way to practice a lot of safety at sea.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's kind of what this next couple of years for us is going to be all about, is practicing those things. We kind of want to get ourselves into situations in a much more controlled environment, rather than like in a place where we can't, where we don't have time to think about it. So we're taking this year for us has been a lot of sort of small trips. And we were at the boat this last weekend, I guess 2 weekends ago, and we've anchored the boat a handful of times, and so even though in places where we would typically, I think, if you're a local sailor in San Diego, you would just pick up a mooring, or you would, just like pick up a slip. We'll take the time to anchor and anchor in places that are less ideal than other places, because it's so safe for us to do, and we have like backup plans right now. And so we're still trying to build our skill set, whether it comes to sailing or first aid or whatever it is. We're trying to build like a broader skill set up, and we're a pretty competent family. I've got I've got two Eagle Scouts as boys, so they're pretty self-reliant guys. They I'm fairly mechanical, but we need to shake down things and break them and fix them and have mistakes now, while it's a little bit easier to fail.
So how is she on the hook?
Well, pretty good, I guess. We haven't had any problems at all. We haven't been we haven't anchored in a lot of wind yet, so to me it's very comfortable. The last anchorage we were at was a little rolly for me, but it was like, because it's a catamaran, we let it just kind of blow into the wind. Actually, I felt like I set an anchor alarm and I didn't. I slept comfortably. The anchor is really easy to manage. It's got a nice windlass that pulls it up, no sweat. It's got a nice heavy anchor. So I think that between it and the monohulls, I think anchoring on a catamaran is, again, far superior, because a little bit of ocean roll, and this was actually quite a bit, because we were actually anchored last weekend outside of San Diego Bay, just behind the jetty, and so the swell was still, you could still feel the swell, and it just doesn't, catamarans just don't sit and roll around, like, so I
Yes,
prefer
so
it
true.
for many, many reasons.
So true. I mean, like
Yeah.
in your opinion, what type of sailing or cruising ground is the 43 foot Leopard perfect for?
Well, that's a great question, and I don't think that I'm really qualified to answer it. But we are definitely going to be taking the boat um, down to the Panama area. We're likely going to cross the South Pacific. So we know people have done that on that Leopard 43. If you haven't followed the winds on YouTube, those guys have done it. Several other people have done it as well. So we'll see how she goes. I don't know. I think that the ideal situation is to do some cruising in the Bahamas. I think that's where you see a ton of leopard catamarans.
Mhm.
I don't see any leopard catamarans on the West Coast. I think there's a few down in Mexico, but like I've never seen another one between. I know that there are, but I haven't seen a whole lot
Mhm.
on the
Hey,
West
do
Coast.
you have any problems with bridge deck slamming at all?
I mean, yes, I don't think that I have a problem with it, but when you're taking swell on the beam, that wave will kind of tuck under the bottom of the boat and hit the
Mhm.
other side, and you'll hear a knock. With the biggest sort of weather we've had it in was probably, I would say, 30 knots, and the seas were pretty bad. And it wasn't, but it was not too. And you'd hear, and we were beating right into the wind. We were heading out to Coronado Islands, outside of off the coast of San Diego, and but so I've heard that can get bad, and I think that everybody who owns a catamaran has to deal with that. But I don't have enough experience on other boats to say whether ours is worse or better than another boat, because this is the only one I've ever owned, except for my Hobie 21, and that that is a completely different animal. So
So how is that Watermaker working for you?
actually, we don't run it. We have no idea,
Okay, so
because
you're
we're still in an area. I have so many mechanical things that I've been working on that the Watermaker has been one that I just haven't wanted to like unpack yet and figure
yeah.
out anything on. So I
So
don't
what
know.
so what kind of modifications have you done and why at this point?
Well, mostly it's been repairs. So I've
Mhm.
rebuilt the transmissions. It's got clutch cone transmissions, and the little clutch cones in them will begin to fail, I guess, if they lose friction. And so that was the last big job that I did, was pulling the transmissions out, servicing the engines, replacing some of the heat exchanger components on the diesels, and pulling those clutch cones apart and replacing clutch cones. And then outside of that, no, we haven't made any modifications to the boat. The previous owner set it up quite nicely, so I don't anticipate, other than the things that I mentioned that we're going to do. I hope that we don't have to do a whole lot of other
Oh,
major modifications.
That's great. I mean, like if you were maybe to swap her for another boat, what would that be? Or maybe you wouldn't
A
swap her.
bigger boat.
A
Yeah,
bigger,
like
like how
with
much
seven
bigger?
seven people on board. I don't know. The only here's the thing. At a certain storing the boat, like putting it in a slip, the bigger you get, and then repairing the boat, like it's just it starts to get very expensive, right? And so, well, I'm happy with the size that she is right now because it's not too bad to pay for a slip fee, which I don't want to. But anything bigger than this, and like if you get, let's say you had a 60-foot catamaran, which would be like fantastic. Well, a 60-foot slip is a lot more than a 43-foot slip. So, because they typically start to charge you for like the whole, like if there's 100 foot of dock space, if unless that you find another fit in front of you, they'll attempt to charge you for the 100 foot of the mooring. So storing it's expensive, and then everything becomes like linearly more expensive with the size of boat. So for me, it's as expensive as I can really afford. The reason that I would do a bigger boat is just because it's, 7 people. It's, even a 43-foot catamaran with 4 cabins is still not as big as my kids would like, but with their kids, so they can just suffer.
That's cool. So how can we follow you on your journey?
Yeah, sure. Well, right, we're posting updates to our blog. I mean, we have a website, 7onthesea.com. So there's a link to the blog there, and there's some YouTube videos. Most of the YouTube videos are kind of just about our tinking around here in Southern California, and sort of preparing for the time where we set off to go cruising. And so I would expect, yeah, we'll be posting updates. We post probably a video every month right now. And we'll post more as we become, as we spend more time on the boat.
So
So,
what's the
yeah.
dream destination for you? What are you gearing up for? What's your ultimate
Well,
itinerary?
that's a great question. The dream destination for me would be to cross the Atlantic and be on the other side to start in Florida. But unfortunately, we live in Utah, and owning a boat in Florida was not an option for us. So owning a boat in California makes sense for us while we're still working. So in the next, like I said, once we are able to pull the trigger, and a big part of the reason that we're delaying everything is, my office has a lot of work for me to do right now, but also COVID is not, this is not an optimal time to set off. So our current plan is to head down towards Panama and sort of explore Mexico and countries in Central America, and then after maybe a year there, set off across the South Pacific. And so
That's great.
who knows though? Like, we don't really have a real plan because we don't like you'd be crazy to make a real plan at this point, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's so great to get your perspective. And I guess the last question I have for you is like, why this boat now? Why this boat at this particular time?
Yeah. Well, like I said, to do what we want to do, it's not, I feel like, and I could be wrong, other people just like sell everything and then they just go live on the boat. And I've seen people do that, and that's totally fine. But for me, I feel like it takes a while to, even though I have been sailing since I was maybe 14,
Oh,
it still feels to me like there's a lot of time and a lot of experiences I need to have before I'm ready to make big ocean crossings. And so I'm sort of taking this next couple of years to really prepare myself, the family, and the boat, and to get everything right. And so we're doing that by just taking very small trips, bigger trips as we go, and get things in order. So that's why we pulled the trigger now, and so it gives us plenty of time to get everything the way that we want it, including ourselves.
wow, that sounds great. Well, thank you so much for being on today.
Yeah.
Catamaransight.com. And, we just wish you, Katie, Kevin, Ben, Truman, Lincoln, Ethan, I think, and Molly. I don't know if I
Yeah,
forgot
that's right. You got them all. Nailed it. Yep.
But, we wish you all fair winds and following seas.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thanks for talking to me.